Special Education in a Culturally Diverse Society by Sherrie. First, a few statistics. Based on the 2000 census, the United States has approximately 275 million people, nearly one of every three of whom are culturally diverse. However, only around 8.2% of teachers are culturally diverse. The United States and its 15,000 plus school districts are more racially and ethnically diverse than ever before, and this increase in diversity is expected to continue. For example, in 1972, diverse students represented 21% of the student body. As of 2005, they comprise 42%, meaning that some 2 in every 5 students are culturally diverse. This graph shows that by the year 2050, there's a projected decrease of 10.6% for white students, an increase of 81% for black students, an almost 200% increase for Hispanic students, and a 300% increase for Asian students and other groups. My presentation covers just a few of the issues facing special education in a culturally diverse society. Disproportionate representation, assessment of culturally diverse students with special needs, getting families involved, and finally, the concept of cultural competence. Disproportionate representation means under or over-representation of minority students in special education or gifted programs. Some of the main causes are low academic achievement and standardized testing has caused certain ethnic groups to be overrepresented based on achievement test scores. Biases in the evaluation process due to factors such as results that reflect cultural differences instead of disability. And teachers may be mistaking minority students' limits in articulating their thinking due to lack of English acquisition for limits in their ability to think. This graph shows the disproportionate representation of black, Hispanic, and white students by the categories of gifted and mental retardation. This graph shows the identification rates for cognitive disabilities by major racial and ethnic groups in comparison to whites. Overrepresentation in special education is most pronounced for black children, who are nearly 3 times more likely to be labeled mentally retarded and nearly twice as likely to be labeled emotionally disturbed. So, what are some of the possible solutions to disproportionate representation? Standardized intelligence tests typically only cover logical, mathematical intelligence and should not be the only tool and used in the assessment process. And different types of assessment, such as the system of multicultural pluralistic assessment or those involving multiple intelligences, have been shown to greatly reduce the percentage of diverse students in special education. And teacher education programs should be expanded so that education majors are required to take more classes to prepare them to work with culturally diverse students. The assessment of students with cultural and linguistic differences has become one of special education's major issues. There is a shortage of personnel qualified to assess these culturally diverse students. Teachers and other staff are not provided with sufficient training. And assessment tools are inadequate when it comes to cultural diversity. Possible solutions include the use of a multidisciplinary team to include parents, educators, and assessors to ensure more accurate assessments, the use of pre-referral strategies and interventions to determine whether difficulties stem from language or cultural differences or from a disability, and the use of tailored assessment of the child that combines non-biased instruments with other sources of information, such as observations and interviews, to produce a multidimensional assessment. Getting the family involved. Family involvement is a major factor in improving student achievement. It's important that teachers and staff be trained in understanding diverse family networks and child rearing traditions. And instructors should show respect and knowledge of their students' culture to the parents. This action typically makes ethnically and racially diverse parents feel more welcomed and encourages them to become more involved with their child's education. It is also important to include family members beyond the parents who are involved in daily child rearing. In closing, I'd like to discuss the components of cultural competence. They apply to individual educators, the schools where they work, and the educational system as a whole. Growth in one area tends to support growth in another. First is valuing diversity. This means accepting and respecting different cultural backgrounds, ways of communicating, traditions, and values. Next is being culturally self-aware. We must understand that educators' own cultures shape their sense of who they are and how they interact with students. Next is understanding the dynamics of cultural interactions. This means acknowledging that there are many factors that can affect interactions across cultures. Institutionalizing cultural knowledge and adapting to diversity. This component refers to designing educational services based on an understanding of students' cultural background. And finally, the fifth element of cultural competence specifically focuses on changing activities to fit cultural norms. Cultural practices can be adapted to develop new tools for educators. For more information, check out the references I used for my presentation. Thank you.